Well, hi there. It's Monday and time for another Monday Mastery. I'm author and dating coach Rick Sodebeer, and we're here to talk about dating and relationships and answer your questions. And today, it's one of those days that I don't have anything particular to talk about. I just have a lot of ideas that I want to share with you. Nothing in particular to focus on, but it's been an interesting week, at, at least for me. I've had a lot of observations this week. One thing that happened over the weekend, a friend of mine called me asking for advice for her daughter, who's married and only been married for a very short time, and married to an alcoholic, and she's brokenhearted that he hasn't changed her ways in how he acts, how he behaves since they got married. And one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that she knew full well what she was getting into. She assumed he would change to once they got married, to be more mature, more adult, take more responsibility. And it's actually the exact opposites that happened. Hey, Kim, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. And this is something I see so often, that in spite of the fact that when someone tells you who they are, when they show you who they are, don't expect them to change for you. Don't ask them to change for you. It's a tragedy waiting to happen, and that's exactly what's going on. This young lady ended up moving back into her mother's house over the weekend, and it's heartbreaking. But it's one of those things that could have been prevented. And this is one of the things that I try to teach. This is one of the things that I try to share with you all. That when you start dating somebody, when you start seeing warning signs, when you start seeing red flags, it's time to leave. And I know that sounds cold. I know that sounds cruel. But you're not there to fix anybody. You're not there to change anyone. And I even look back to when I was first married or first dating my future ex-wife. I looked at there were some things that were warning signs for me, but I thought, yeah, I can live with that. I can take care of that. I can handle that. And ultimately, no, I couldn't. Just like this young lady now is potentially facing divorce. Unless he's willing to go into Alcoholics Anonymous, unless she does Al-Anon or some other program like that relationship is bound to fail, or they're going to live miserable lives. It's just something that is, and it's so common, and it's so avoidable. And it doesn't make any difference how much you love somebody. It doesn't make any difference how much they love you. When somebody has demons like alcohol abuse or drug abuse or even cigarettes, if you're not into smoking, don't expect them to give up cigarettes for you, or smoking or tobacco, or in any form. Just don't expect it. No change is going to come to that person unless it comes from within. They have to want to change. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. And and for those of you that are watching, chime in and let me know you're here. It's always great to see who's watching, and we end up having some great conversations. So again, when you start dating somebody, this is the time that you need to start understanding what you're facing. Hey, Addie, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. And that's what the dating or the courting process is all about, is to see if they're worthy of you, and vice versa. You have to be worthy of them, they have to be worthy of you. And when you start dating somebody, this is the time to start evaluating whether they meet your must-haves and your or if they have any of your deal breakers, or if you see any other warning signs. You may have a very short list of deal breakers, but there may be other warning signs. They may, and everybody's warning signs, everybody's deal breakers are a little bit different. Mine are a certain set of I have a certain set of deal breakers and a certain set of warning signs. But the minute you start, hey, Liz, thanks for, Liz says, hello from Big Snow Country. Yes, ma'am. Glad you're here, Liz. Thanks for joining in. And as soon as, you start recognizing any warning signs, any of your warning signs, things that cause you to step back and say, whoa, I'm not crazy about that, or oh, I didn't anticipate that, or no, that's a deal breaker. Don't leave the blinders on. Don't assume that things will change just because you came into their life. When somebody tells you who they are, believe them. Don't argue with them. Don't accept. I mean, you can accept them for who they are, but don't make them a part of your life. If it's something, if there are deal breakers or warning signs, or even if they don't have all of your must-haves. You should be looking for an extraordinary relationship. And you can't have that if they don't have all of your must-haves, if they have any of your deal breakers, if you can't develop the four cornerstones of great relationship, which is the four cornerstones are developing an intellectual connection, a spiritual connection, an emotional connection, and a physical connection. If you can't develop connections in those four key areas, and for those of you that aren't familiar, when I talk about a physical connection, there has to be some attraction. I'm not talking just about sex. Sex is a big part of it, but that's something that should be left until very late in the relationship, as in marriage type time. And again, don't try to change your partner. It just doesn't work. It doesn't last. When you find a good person, let them be who they are. And what you'll find is your relationship will be much healthier if you have all of these other components in place. It's really magical when everything comes into play. You have things in common. You have you develop the intellectual, spiritual, emotional, physical connection. You speak similar love languages, and then there's a good chemistry. When all these things come together, it's almost magical, and I just come to a loss of words when I try to describe it, because it is so absolutely amazing. And everybody that I've talked to that's been in a soulmate relationship has said virtually the same thing. Their partner has brought more to the relationship than they ever could have imagined. So when you start looking at your must-have and your deal breaker list, don't worry about it being too picky or thinking, oh, I can never find somebody like this. You can. They are out there. And that leads to another subject that, or veering off a little bit here, is that so many people tell me, well, there are no good men out here, or no good women. There's so few and far between. And I have to ask you, if you're in that camp, are you looking for a bunch of men or a bunch of women to choose from? Or are you looking for one specific person? Now, if you ask me, you should be looking for one specific person. I'm looking for one specific person. If I go online and start looking at profiles, I may scroll through 20 or 30 profiles before I find one that I'm even attracted to, or that I'm even interested in. And even then, there are things that I go through the profile to see if there's any warning signs, or and when I talk about myself, she's got to do the same thing. If I don't meet her wants, needs, and desires, then it's not going to be a fit. But it isn't until we both decide, or you both decide, that you have an interest in each other, that you can start a conversation. So and I know this is a broken record, and I may think that I'm repeating myself, but the reality is you're looking for that needle in a haystack relationship, or should be. This is not a matter of trying to find a bunch of people that are worthy of you. This is about finding your one special person. So when you tell me that there are no great guys out there, well, you shouldn't be looking for a dozen. You should be looking for the one. And the flip side of that is that, yes, you do need to go out with people, and there needs to be a reasonable pool. But if there's not a reasonable pool of people to choose from directly in your area, you have to start searching outside of your area. You have to start thinking about, am I mobile? Am I willing to move? If you're stuck in with your feet planted in the ground like a tree, then you might have a little more difficult time. You'll have to find somebody that is willing to move to you. So there are a lot of things to consider, but when you start looking and start dating one particular person, start checking out, going through your checklists, and I know that sounds less than fun. It sounds less than romantic, but the reality is the romance will come together at a different time. What you want to make sure is that you have that special person that's going to meet your needs, and you're going to meet theirs. This isn't a matter of just going out and dating and connecting with somebody, and it's all going to be fun and games. It's not even when you're with your soulmate. It's not going to be all fun and games. There's going to be stressors. Life happens. People have issues. Your partner might come down with an illness or a disease. There are life stresses. Somebody loses a job, or somebody loses a family member or a child, and all these things happen, and you have to be prepared. But if you're going to be in a relationship, you've got to be with somebody that can be supportive of you, and will be supportive of you, and understand and help you work through issues just like you'll help them work through their issues. So I'm on a rant tonight. So, and it all boils down to making better choices up front. You'll have a much happier, much more enjoyable relationship. You're not going to struggle as much in a relationship or in a future marriage when you've chosen wisely up front. And I look at, I go back to my experiences with my ex, and even the women that I date, that I have dated, for any length of time, is I go in with my eyes wide open to observe what's happening. Is this somebody I want to spend time with? And you should be going through the same process. I know it's not always fun, but you have to step back from the infatuation and raging hormones of a new relationship to be able to understand what's going on. Because it's much more difficult to work on a broken relationship or a broken marriage than it is to make a good choice up front. And just like my friend's daughter is going through this hard time right now, it's it's one of those things that had she been more open and forthright with her mother, with her friends, they could have pointed out to her, no, this is not the guy for you. She loves him dearly, and he loves her dearly, but he's got demons that are tying him to alcohol, and that's he needs professional help, and that's help that she can't give him, and nor should she want to. And now she's brokenhearted because she's invested, and she's only been married for a little over a year, but nonetheless, she's brokenhearted because she had what she thought was a knight in shining armor has turned out to be a little rusty and at best shining aluminum beer cans. So it is heartbreaking, and we never want to see our children go through it. I don't want to see any of you go through this. It's a matter of making good decisions now so that you can live that life of romance and happiness and joy that we all want, need, and desire. It's looking for that godly relationship, where you're both working on the relationship together. And again, you have to be there for each other. And when one is not, when one's working on it and one is putting in all the effort and the other isn't, you've got a one-sided relationship. These are things that need to be observed and acted on early on. And I know it sounds cold. It may not. It may take some of the romance out of dating, and taking some of the I don't want to say the fun, but yeah, it probably takes some of the fun out of dating when you're focusing on what the possibilities. Is this somebody worth that I can see myself with 20 years from now? Can I see them through thick and thin? Will they see me through thick and thin? Is this the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? Getting to the marriage phase is easy, or getting to the altar is easy. It's at what comes afterwards. And when you don't pick wisely, when you don't do your due diligence up front, that next 15, 20, 30 years or 40 years that you're going to spend with somebody is going to be a major headache. And I don't want to see any of you go through any problems that you don't need. Life presents enough problems as it is, that we just don't need to dive into relationships just because he's cute, or he does this for me, or she does that for me, or I really like the way she does this, I really like the way, whatever it is that you like about them. That it's got to be the whole package. And unless you have that whole package, you are going to have nothing but problems later on. Even if it's a good relationship, it's not going to be as good as it could be, because there is going to be parts of that relationship that, if I would have waited a little bit longer, I would have found somebody that met all my needs, all my must-haves. I wish I would have waited for somebody that had this particular characteristic. When you do that, the relationship that comes later on is going to be overwhelming. It's going to it's going to make you want to be a better person. Just right from the very beginning, you're going to want to be better, just to please them, and they're going to do the same for you. They're going to want to be a better person, and it's just a mutual life enhancing experience. And who wants to argue? I've been in a marriage that we ended up arguing, and it was at a point that neither one of us could have a conversation that didn't end in angry words. The relationship had just deteriorated that far. And no matter how much I tried, no matter what she tried, it was just unworkable. It became a relationship that was doomed to fail or destined to fail. And that's why I'm here, is because I've experienced these things, and many of you have too. Some of you are widows or widowers, but I've walked down the road of making mistakes, and that's what I'm trying to share with you is some of the mistakes that are many of the mistakes that I've made, because Lord knows I've made my share. To share with you, to benefit from my experience, to help you be a little more patient, to help you wait a little bit longer, to encourage you not to get overly frustrated or down about the dating process. When you use some of the techniques that I teach you, building or creating your must-have and deal-breaker list, that in and of itself is a huge part of dating successfully. It's a huge part of helping you not make mistakes. It's a huge part of not becoming a statistic, and statistics show that, and this is these are not my stats, these are from the Census Bureau, that 60% of first marriages survive, but not all of those are good, strong, healthy relationships. Some of them just stay together just because it's the pain of leaving is much greater than the pain of staying. But the pain of leaving is temporary, whereas the pain of staying is permanent. And sometimes we just get wrapped up in that point where yeah, it's just too hard. We'll just make it work, and yeah, we'll survive. That's not the relationship I want for you. That's not the relationship you should want for yourself. And that's not the relationship you should want for your kids. And anyway, back to statistics. 60% of first marriages do survive. But those that don't, the 40% that move on to a second marriage, 63% of those fail. 71% of third marriages fail. Why? Because we're not paying attention. We're not doing the due diligence that we need to do. We're not learning from our past experiences. Now, and why, you may ask, why, Rick, why is it so important to have a must-have list? Well, I'll tell you what, and the reason it's so important is that most people that come to me, 95% of people, when they first come to me and talk about what they're looking for, they can tell me more about what they don't want than what they do want. And when you know more about what you don't want, guess what's going to happen? That's what you're going to attract. It's how our mind works. Whatever we focus on is what we find. It's what we attract. And so it's so important to create a positive must-have list, as opposed to knowing what you don't want or having this long deal-breaker list. When you start drawing a long deal breaker list, well, guess what? You're going to end up looking for a long time, because all you're going to do is find the people that are like your ex. They possess all the qualities that you don't want. And that's not the type of relationship you want to find. At least I hope not. Yeah, otherwise, I'm just sitting here ranting and raving, which I may be doing anyway, but that's okay. If I can, and if I can connect with just one person and get them to see the light and make a different choice, then so be it. That's what I'm here. That's what I'm all about, is trying to help you guys understand that some of the the basic let me restate that. It's the basics of dating, the fundamentals of dating that we all need to relearn or remember or to learn for a first time. I was thinking this afternoon, where did I learn how to date? What were where did my knowledge come from? It certainly wasn't my parents. Now, I observed some things in my parents' relationship, and they were divorced early. I think they were divorced by the time I was 12. And that's and at that point I recognized I don't want to do that. But it took me some years, even into my marriage, to recognize, oh, geez, I'm turning into my dad. I'm turning, and my parents had a very dysfunctional, unhealthy relationship. They were actually better friends than husband and wife. And that brings up another part. You can be good friends with the opposite sex. It's just, it is, if you've dated them, you can remain friends. I have a couple of lady friends that I've met online, and we've dated a couple of times, and there's a handful of them that I just absolutely love and I would do anything for. But I just know that we can't be together as a couple. There are too many differences. And that's why it's so important to understand what you want, need, and desire in a relationship. It's not all about going out. It's not all about the fun times that you can have while you're dating. It's not the fun vacations you can take when you're dating. You have to be looking ahead. You have to be thinking ahead. Is this somebody that I can see myself spending the rest of my life with? Because your ultimate goal should be to find somebody that will take you to your last breath. God willing, that my next marriage will, like the movie The Notebook, that we could both die in each other's arms. That would be, to me, that it's obviously not likely, but it would be an ideal way to go. So that should be the ultimate goal. Is this somebody that I can spend the rest of my life with? Is this somebody that can hold my hand when I have problems? Is this somebody that I can hold her hand when she has problems? And are they going to be there to lift us up in our times of need and stand there beside us in our victories and in life? Because we all have wins and losses. For those of us that still work, there are good days and there are bad days. Hopefully, you have more good days. But the whole idea is that you need to have that partner that's going to bring a light to your life. You've got to. They should be the one that you look forward to seeing them walk in the door every night. They're the ones that you should want to have your first conversation with when you walk in the door. It shouldn't be the TV. It should. You should want to be able to share your day with them. Now, granted, sometimes depending on your job or whatever's going on during the day, that you may need a little decompression time, but there are ways that you can decompress on the way home. Take a little detour, take a walk through the park before you get home, so you can be mentally prepared to be with your spouse. So anyway, if you guys got questions, please feel free to shoot them in the comments here. Y'all have been pretty quiet tonight. I don't know if I'm just on a magical rant or a magical tear tonight, and y'all are just sitting back there and soaking it in, or coming and going, and I'm just looking at some notes over here. And one of the other things, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit on you, and get a little deeper into the dating aspect of it. So often I hear ladies tell me, well, I'm a traditional kind of woman, and I think the man should pursue the woman. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining in. Terry's here. Thank you for joining in, Terry. And, oh, Addie says, just listening and cooking. Awesome. Um, you know, so many times I hear from especially from women that I'm a traditional woman, and that I think the I'm sorry, I got distracted here, Paul. I'll be right with you. They tell me that the men should pursue them. They want to be pursued, and that's okay. But I I found out some interesting information in the last few days that, and this was from a study. I don't have the details of the study, but it was reported that men are very much attracted to women that will initiate the conversation, and it's not. And I love a woman that will initiate the conversation, and the study verified what I've thought, is that indicates that the woman is confident, that she's a strong woman, and that's something that's very attractive to men. So ladies, don't poo-poo initiating a conversation. You can even go back to the Bible, the book of Ruth, and where she had to go lay at Boaz's feet to get him to notice her. I mean, he noticed her from afar and was attracted to her, but there was no initiation of a relationship until she went in and laid at his feet at night. And so it's something that is biblical, that sometimes women have to initiate the conversation. They have to initiate the connection. And again, it takes courage, just like it takes courage for guys to walk up and ask you. Paul says, and he brings up an interesting point. He says, the rest of my life is getting a whole lot shorter. Well, yeah, it is for all of us, Paul. And, that's one thing I have to caution everybody on, because some people start to panic. And Paul, I look at the rest of my life. I heard an interesting analogy a couple of weeks ago, that if you stretch out you stretch out a tape measure to about 80 or 85 inches, that's about, the number of years that we have. When you're down at the 20 and 30 and even the 40, there's still a lot of tape measure left. But, I turned 66 in a few weeks, and that means I've got maybe 20 years, 25 if I'm lucky. So Paul, I can truly appreciate that the rest of my life, like yours, is getting a whole lot shorter. But and I think you're like me, I don't want to spend the rest of my life, and I don't think you want to spend the rest of your life with the wrong one. When you're crystal clear about what you want in the relationship, it makes it a lot easier to weed out those that are not right for you. And those are that pile of resumes, so to speak, is always going to be much greater than the handful of resumes that meet your most of your criteria. Sorry, Terry. Yeah, the shortness of life is a reality for all of us. It is finite, and like I've said so many times, I'd rather spend the next 20 years looking and have the last 5 years of my life with my soulmate than to spend the next 20 or 25 years in a mediocre relationship just trying to make it work, just trying to get by. And it can get frustrating, Paul. And it can get frustrating for all of you that we want that extraordinary relationship. We want that soulmate in our lives. And it's just not happening on our time frame. But I tell you, I see, every couple of days or so, I see somebody on my Facebook page or somebody from my meetup group. I just got a message from a guy in my meetup group last week when I sent out sent out my first blog in the last 12 months, and he said it was about how women stay in relationships way too long, and it was kind of, now that I think about it, it was kind of a foretelling of what the weekend was going to bring for me. But anyway, I digress. And he announced that the subject was off topic, but he was glad to hear from me. And he told me, and he had told me several months before that he had started dating somebody from the group, from my meetup group. And he told me, announced that they're getting married in June. Now, how awesome is that? So these things happen, but it didn't happen overnight. And none of it does. And a lot of it will depend on how active you are. There was, I forgot what her name was from last week, and or a couple of weeks ago, and I felt a little bit bad because I thought I came down pretty hard on her. But if there's not a lot of dating activity, and it is up to you to be out looking, if you're sitting at home, hoping that somebody's going to find you, well, the odds of being found are slim to none, and I think Slim left town. So it does take activity, and the more activity you put in, the sooner that you'll come across your soulmate. And if that means you have to travel, if that means a long distance conversation, those are things that you may have to consider. And it's all part of the process. Now, you can choose to live singly for the rest of your life. That is your choice. But I think we're designed to be in relationship, and not just with God, but with someone special to us. I truly believe that's God's design for us. And when we put in the effort, and we do have to put in the effort, it's not something that you can just wave a magic wand. It's not like, and so many people jump onto online dating and just slap a profile together in hopes that they'll scroll through a handful of profiles and find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right or whatever it is. And Liz says, I'm 72, widowed for 22 years, and been through cancer, came out on the winning side. Congratulations. I live it every day and don't think about how many years or even days I have left. Put your best foot forward and enjoy the magic of the day. That's awesome. And those are, she says, there's my thoughts on life. Absolutely. That's an awesome way to look at it, Liz. I love that. And Paul says, I think it would be it would be great for the women would do the ask if the women would do the asking, at least on occasion. And I totally agree. I totally agree, Paul. And like I said earlier, I think that's a sign of a woman with confidence. But that kind of leads a sidetrack into another thing that I want to talk about tonight is communication. Ladies, and I'm picking on the ladies because I don't get to see the communications from guys. So ladies, maybe you can pipe in here and share some ideas or some thoughts on what you're seeing, especially on online dating, or even if you've met somebody and you're texting, return the message. It may not be convenient to return a message at the moment it comes in. It may need to take a couple of hours, depending on what you're doing. You don't have to drop everything to answer a text. But, if you're interested, don't make him guess. Don't make him wait. And ladies, if you're seeing the same thing, just guys, don't delay. Don't let it hang out there for 4 or 5 days. Because I'll tell you what happens with me is if I send you a couple of texts and I get nothing in response, after about a week or so, maybe 10 days, and I realize that there can be other things going on. I ask myself, and you should ask yourself the very same thing. What else could this mean? There are situations that I've experienced that, oh yeah, I've been out of town. I've had a parent die, or I've had somebody that my father was ill, and I had to go out of town for a few days, and anything to do with dating was not on my plate. So I understand that. But if you're going to be actively searching, actively seeking, if you're not interested, just say so. Just say, I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling the connection. Let's move on. Let me get caught up here. Addie says, I have no issues doing the asking. I just have to find or get a feeling he's communicative. Absolutely. And sometimes, Addie, it takes you asking. But that's what I was actually getting at, is be communicative. If you're not going to be communicative, don't complain if you're not finding good people to date. You've got to respond. And Addie says, for me, no response is a response. Well, that's a good way of putting it. And I'll give most people a week to maybe 10 days, and then I'm done, because I don't want to play the game. If you're interested, you're interested. If you're not, number one, tell me. But I'm not going to try to guess. I'm not going to try to cajole you. I'm not, and I've met women that feel that they need to be absolutely pursued, and the guy needs to do all the work, and I totally disagree. If you want to get to know somebody, if you like him, ladies, you need to do your part to show that you're interested. It's a two-way street here, and we're getting along late enough in life for most of us. Addie, you're a little bit younger than most of us, but we don't have time to play games. So if you want to play games, if you want to screw around and play, well, I'm not gonna respond. I want to see him pursue me. Guess what? You're going to be alone for a long time, because anymore guys just don't like to play those games. We've been beat up, and not to get on a different soapbox, but we've been beat up for so many years. That women can do everything that a man can do, and okay. That's fine, but it still needs a participation on both parts to make a relationship work. If you don't, if you want to do that in the workplace, great, but don't try to do it in a relationship. You're only going to screw that relationship up, and it goes both ways, ladies. I'm not picking on you only. Guys can play the same games, and it's not healthy. It's not a great way to develop a relationship. Addie says, but the man has to ask me questions as well. Absolutely. I shouldn't be the only one asking and being interested in getting to know them. And that's what I just said, Addie, and I appreciate that. That's exactly right. It needs to be a two-way street for good communication. And if you're not feeling a good connection, just end it and say, yeah, I I'm not feeling a connection here. It's time to move on and let's do something else. But if you do have an interest, don't play the game. Don't play the game of, well, I'll go silent for a few days and because it's his turn to reach out to me. No, not at all. It should be a give and take. It's you should be reaching out to her. Guys, reach out to her. Ladies, reach out to him. And now there are going to be certain situations or circumstances where there may be a delay. Like I said, maybe they're out of town for work. Maybe they're busy. I was just talking with a very dear friend over the weekend, and she was upset with her neighbor because he had promised to come over and help her with a project that would take probably 10 minutes, and he was a no-show. Just communicate. And not only was she upset, but he came back sheepishly a few days later and said, hey, do you need help with this? No, we already got it taken care of. So it's, you can avoid a lot of problems just by communicating up front. It's so easy to get your feelings hurt. It's so easy to be upset. We're upset about everything these days. And I'm at a point where, yeah, okay, I'm not going to really get upset about it. Is it worth me losing any sleep over? Is it worth me wasting 10 minutes to stew about it? Probably not. And Paul says, I always ask lots of questions. It's because I'm interested in how people tick. That's awesome. Everyone has a unique story. That's right. And you don't know until you ask questions. You've got to ask. And don't be the only one asking questions. And if you're asked questions, make sure you give a decent response and ask questions in return. This has to be a two-way street. If you're meeting somebody and they're non-communicative, is that the kind of relationship that you want? I hear so many times that, my husband just comes in, has dinner, plops down on the couch, and all we do is watch TV. Well, odds are that's kind of the way it was before you got into a full-blown routine. And once you get into a relationship, once you get into a marriage, or once you get married, you still need to pursue each other. There's still you got to have date night. You've got to have nights that you can get away from the routine and whether it's going golfing. And if only one of you golfs, the other goes with and drives the cart, or whatever it is. If you go sailing, take an afternoon to go sailing. Whatever can get you away into a new atmosphere. Go to the shooting range. Go to an art and wine event. Where you bring your bottle of wine and sit and paint a picture, a copy of a picture that's on the wall. Those can be fun events. Go to a cooking class together. Learn something together. And Liz says, I just want to say that I really appreciate hearing everyone's thoughts on things here. And thank you, Liz. And it is great because you guys participate, and that's what makes the show, is your participation, and it not only you're sharing what you're doing, but you're helping others see that there may be other possibilities, there may be other things that they didn't think of. So, it's not just me here, it's you guys as well. Your feedback is awesome. Addie says, exactly, it's a two-way conversation. I've been coming across a lot of men online and don't show much interest. Doesn't last, but maybe a few texts back and forth before it's dead, unless I'm bringing up a topic. It's just frustrating. Well, Addie, I know, and it there that seems to be quite common on both sides. I see the same thing, and I'm sure, and the rest of you can pop in here and say, tell us whether you're experiencing the same thing. But then you're weeding out the outliers already and saying, yeah, nope, this isn't going to work. It's not a two-way street. There's not enough interest there. And again, you have to be a little bit cautious about how you proceed and how not reading too much into it. I've talked to people and left messages and had people respond, 10 days, 2 weeks later, says, oh, I didn't even see, I haven't been on here in a while, and yada, yada, yada. But, if there's not an interest even in being there, then you might snag one that way. But, here's another thought. Communicate well in your profile if you're doing online dating. And I'm not here to advocate for it, but it's a good tool. It's a great tool to meet people that you wouldn't normally meet in your daily walk through life. It may have to be long distance. If you're in a small area, create an awesome profile, but you've got to create the profile. And then, if you start getting some overwhelming level of messages, then, you have to step back and weed through some of those and see who you might be interested in responding to and who you're not. Addie says, the pool becomes super small, weeding those out. Well, it does, and that's the whole point, because all you're doing is should be looking for one. No more than that. This is not about finding a pool of in your case, Addie, a pool of guys to choose from. Next thing you know, the only men that show interest would be toothless hillbilly. Well, yeah, I get my share of those too. But that's all part of the process. And one of the things that I find is that the quality of people that you find online will be dependent on how much you're willing to spend for the site. The free sites, there are a lot of bottom dwellers there, and you'll find an occasional diamond in the rough, but rarely are you going to find the quality of person that you're looking for on a free site. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. Now, the other thing you have to take in consideration: what's it worth for you to find your soulmate? Is it worth investing in yourself to find your soulmate, whether that be online dating, whether it be be reading books, whether it be taking a course, in learning how to become more effective at dating? What is the value of you finding your soulmate? Only you guys can determine that. I know what it is. I know what it is for me. That's priceless. Just being able to have that person there that's someone that knows you intimately, and I'm not talking sexually, but I'm talking about the person that you can let into your life, and they know all about you. They know all the details. They know all the dark secrets. They know your public personality or your work personality versus your home personality. They know they come to learn the skeletons in the closet, and you get to know theirs. You get to know their skeletons. You get to know their personality at home. You get to know their personality at work. I was having this very conversation with a friend of mine over the weekend, and and she said, "Well, I'm the same person, whether I'm at work, whether I'm at home, with people I know, with people I don't know, and I don't have any secrets." And she might be one of the rare ones, but I know I have my secrets, that are things that I've done in my past that nobody's going to know, except maybe a few of the instigators or troublemakers that were there. But I know I have a public personality. And now after tonight, or after the show, I will go right into just a big calm and quiet, and because I'm more of an introvert. It's hard to believe. The way I talk and the way I come across from most of the time, you'd never guess that I'm an introvert, but that's my preferred. That's my personality style, and it works. It's okay for me. Oh, bugger. And let's see. Is anybody else having buffering problems? Addie says must be your connection. Okay. Because Addie says she's good there. Okay. And I was kind of worried about that. I'm where I am in Terry says she's not buffering. So Paul, you might want to check your connection. And but I was worried about that, and I'm glad you said something, Paul. Because we're just coming on to spring break down here, and I was having a conversation with a couple of my neighbors at cocktail hour tonight, and they were saying that they confirmed that they had Wi-Fi issues mid evening last night, and we suspect it's because so many T-Mobile people are migrating into the area for the next month, or for the next, through the end of summer. So anyway, but I digress. Anyway, well, we're coming about to the end of the hour, so why don't we just wrap it up here? And if you guys have any Terry, I am in just outside of Gulf Shores, Alabama, and I've been here most of the winter, and it for those of you farther north, it was about 80 or 81 degrees here today. It was a little chilly. It was about 56 this morning. Yesterday was 51. I had to put on a sweatshirt. So anyway, I apologize. That's mean for those of you that are in the north. Liz, I know that it looked like, I thought you had about 40 degrees today. Maybe that was yesterday. So snow is starting to melt up there, and I'm looking forward to getting up there mid-month next month. But for the next couple of weeks, or next few weeks, probably another 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be here in Alabama. Then I'll be in Texas for a week, and then up in Kansas City area for a week or so. Oh, Kathy, I'm glad to see you're here. Yeah, it's starting to get nicer in the central part of the country, or in the slightly northern latitudes. So it's glad to see you're here, Kathy. Thank you so much. And so it's time for me to start migrating north again, and I'll be there in mid-April, and looking forward to spending about 4 or 5 months up there. So anyway, hey Kathy, thanks for joining in. Oh, good. It was glad to see that. Yeah, it's been nice. So, but with that said, I'm going to wrap things up tonight. Thank you all for joining in. I'm glad you all were here. Thank you for your comments. And as Paul says, or I think, was it Liz? One of you said that they were glad to see comments. And that's what makes this program is to see how everybody deals with things, or to find out what they're dealing with, and that they're not alone in what they have to, in what they're going through. So you guys make it awesome. I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you enjoyed the program tonight. I will see you next Monday. I'll be back next Monday at 6. Well, I don't know if it goes to it'll be daylight savings time next week. I know it changes in here somewhere. But anyway, it'll be 6 o'clock, whatever, Central Time, whatever the savings or standard time, or whatever it is. So anyway, I digress. Thank you all. Have a great and blessed week. I'll see you next Monday, and I love you guys. Thanks for being here.